everyone, welcome back to Chrysalis Books. My name is Jessica and the topic of today's video is my October series review of the Mercy Thompson series by Patricia Briggs, the Rizzoli and Isles series by Tess Gerritsen, and the Twilight series by Stephenie Meyer. So grab a cup of coffee and let's get started. If you're new to this channel, my name, like I said, is Jessica. I write the blog Lady Lovestead and I manage my urban homestead where we read a lot of books. And I have started a series of videos called the Series Review where I read 3 book series in a month. Not the entire series, but one installment every month. So right now the book series that I am working on are the Mercy Thompson series by Patricia Briggs, which is a paranormal adult fantasy, urban fantasy, and the Rizzoli and Isles series by Tess Gerritsen, which is like your standard murder mysteries, and then the Twilight series by Stephenie Meyer in preparation for reading the newest book that came out, which is Midnight Sun. This month we were on book 2 in these series. So book 2 for the Mercy Thompson series is Bloodbound. In this book, Mercy is called upon by her friend Stefan, who is a vampire. He takes her because he needs a witness to a conversation he's about to have with a new vampire in town that's causing a lot of problems. In this conversation, the new vampire bewitches Stefan, which is really hard to do since Stefan is a pretty powerful vampire, and then murders a couple of people right in front of Mercy, who is in her coyote form because she is a shapeshifter who can shift into the form of a coyote. So that is the start of this story. Basically, Mercy has stumbled upon this man who is half vampire and half possessed warlock is what they call him, because he's let a demon control him. And he has this ability to really incite a lot of violence and unpredictable behavior wherever he goes. So he kind of has like a radius around him, and wherever he is within that radius, people are more prone to anger and lashing out and violent behavior. So the whole town is kind of erupting into more crimes of passion, more violent activities, and it's affecting the magical communities as well, including the werewolves and the fae communities within Mercy's area. And at one point, several of the werewolves go missing along with a vampire, and so it becomes up to Mercy to stop this warlock from causing further damage because of her particular magical abilities. She's a bit immune to others' magic, and so because of that, she's like the only one in the town who can actually go after this big bad. And this was an interesting book because in the first book you really get an overall sense of the werewolf community, because Mercy is next door neighbors to the local pack alpha, and so you really get to know the werewolf community, you get to know Mercy really well. But in the second book here, you get to know the vampires and how the vampire world functions, how their magic functions, their rules for existence, etc. So I like that we got to learn about a new part of this worldview, this world system, and it was full of adventure. There's some good character development, some good plot points. There is a love triangle between Mercy and 2 of the werewolves. One of the werewolves she knew from when she was a child, the other one is the local pack alpha, Adam. And so that adds a little bit of that romantic tension within the story as well. One thing that I thought was interesting, because I mentioned this in the September series review, which I'll link up here, but I mentioned that part of what I find really cool about this Mercy Thompson series is that Mercy herself is actually a Christian. And so we see how this worldview functions within a Christian framework, in that, you know, these magical creatures and stuff are just seen as other children of God, basically. But there's still evil afoot. So like the vampires are mostly evil. And Mercy actually takes a bracelet with her that has a lamb on it. And it protects her from some of the vampire magic, because it's similar to why some people wear a crucifix. But an interesting point that she makes in here, she doesn't like to wear a crucifix because she doesn't like the image of Jesus being tortured on the cross, but she prefers to see him as the lamb that was sacrificed for our sins. And so instead of wearing a crucifix, she wears a lamb. And because of that faith that she puts into her bracelet, the bracelet does end up protecting her from the evil surrounding some of the vampires within that vampire clan. So that was interesting to see. And overall, this was just a good, fun book. And I rated it 3 stars out of 5. Next on our series review is the second installment in the Rizzoli and Isles series by Tess Gerritsen. This is called The Apprentice, and if you remember from the first review, the first book in the series is called The Surgeon, and it focuses on a mass murderer, I guess not mass murderer, but a serial killer who does really terrible things to women. And in this book, what ends up happening is that there is a copycat killer to the first killer, the surgeon. That's why it's called The Apprentice. And this is the first time in the series that we meet Maura Isles. Maura Isles is my favorite character, and that was really exciting to meet her and to get to know her a little bit. The story is primarily told third person limited from Jane Rizzoli's point of view. And so we don't know Maura intimately in the story yet, but we do get to know her as a character and establish her as a character. Sorry, my nose itches. One thing that I was really interested to see followed up on in this book is in the first book in The Surgeon, Jane Rizzoli actually shoots an unarmed black man. Ugh, yeah, I know, right? These books were published in the early 2000s. Let me show you the date. So this one came out in 2002. The first one came out either in the year 2000 or 2002 or 2001. So in the first book, she does shoot an unarmed black man and he dies, which is cringeworthy. Ugh. And she does get disciplined for it. Like, she almost loses her job. There's like this big investigation. But I was really interested to see if Tess Gerritsen would follow up on that in this book, or if that would just be the end of the story for that. And so I was pleasantly, I guess not surprised, but I was pleased with the way she did follow up on it, because throughout this book, she is seen as slightly unstable. Not Tess Gerritsen, Jane Rizzoli is seen as mentally unstable, not because she's like a woman or whatever, but because she has shot that guy. She's kind of under surveillance, and the other officers and her boss just don't trust her that much. She's suspended. She's forced to go to mental health counseling. Like, they're just on edge around Jane in this book, and that is in large part to her shooting the unarmed man in the previous book. So she's threatened several times to be put on probation, to lose her job, to be sat at a desk, and this is after she was suspended for a while after shooting the man and after there was the investigation. And I think that I like that, not just because Tess Gerritsen showed consequences for that with Jane, but also in the way that Jane kind of wrestles with the guilt around it, how she wrestles with coming to terms with that. I liked the way Tess Gerritsen portrayed the people around Jane being like kind of cautious around her and kind of keeping an eye on her. I liked that Tess Gerritsen had that prescience even in the early 2000s, before the Black Lives Matter movement started. There's a lot more that she could have done. Like, don't get me wrong, there's a lot more that could have been done. Like, Jane should have been pressed charges. Like, they should have pressed charges against Jane, is what I'm trying to say. Like, she should have been charged with murder. But at the time that this was written, in the social climate that it was written, I'm okay with how it was handled. I'm not in love with it. Like I said, I think more should have happened in terms of the consequences, but she also didn't just brush it over, right? It wasn't like case closed, never talked about again. Like, this does haunt Jane in multiple ways. So, the other thing that Tess Gerritsen does with these books is she does a pretty good in-depth study of the nature of evil, which I think is an interesting way to approach a series dealing with crime. And in this book, she is exploring the idea of whether or not evil is nature or nurture. Are we just born evil, or do we learn to become evil and do evil things? And so I like exploring that as well as I read this series. So overall, I did give this 3 stars out of 5. It was a pretty good pace. The characters were starting to really get to know them. I like that Maura Isles is finally introduced in this book, and it was a good continuation of the story that was started with the surgeon. So 3 stars out of 5. Alright, and the last book in the last series that we're reading, which is the Twilight series, New Moon, is the second installment in the Twilight series. This was published in 2006. In this book, I feel like everybody already knows what Twilight is about, but basically the synopsis in this book is that at a birthday party that the Cullens throw for Bella, Bella ends up getting a paper cut, opening a present, and then one of the vampires tries to eat her. And so that really bothers Edward, so he decides to take his family and move away so that Bella is protected. And then when he leaves her, he breaks up with her, and it shatters Bella. Like, she is a shattered person, completely broken person. And her father is really worried about her, so he encourages her to start hanging out with her friends more, in particular hanging out with Jacob Black, who is a childhood friend of hers and a family friend. And she does end up spending more time with Jacob Black, and then Jacob ends up developing feelings for her, so on and so forth. So this is a long book too. This was like 560 some pages, 563 pages. Jacob is a werewolf. The werewolves begin to develop within the community as a response to the presence of vampires, because werewolves are protectors. They're there to basically kill vampires and protect people from the vampires. So as there's werewolves in the community, more and more young men within Jacob's tribe, the Quileutes, start to transform into werewolves. It activates that DNA for them. So we do get to learn more about the werewolves in this book, and I liked this book. I thought it was really interesting how Stephenie Meyer portrayed grief, and grief being just like a hole in Bella's chest that she has to hold herself together. I think a lot of people do experience that level of grief when they lose someone that they love. And one writing element that I thought was actually pretty brilliant was after Edward leaves her and she is found in the woods, Stephenie Meyer does this cool thing. I'm just trying to find the page where, to illustrate how depression can work sometimes, she just leaves several pages blank. So like, here it is. So we've got October, November, December. I thought that was brilliant. I thought that was such a good way to illustrate just how bleak and dark and nothingness that level of depression can feel like, where it's just like every day's the same level of misery, the same day of darkness. You're just surviving, you're not celebrating anything, you're not finding joy in anything, and every day is just a blankness. And I thought that in terms of a writing tool or a writing trick was just a really brilliant way to illustrate that deep, dark level of depression. I have not seen any other writers do that before, but just those blank pages and feeling that time go by, like you just feel that. You feel that blankness, that emptiness through the passage of time, and I really loved that strategy. Otherwise, this is a pretty standard YA paranormal romance, and it does have like a certain coziness about it that I enjoy. There are problematic parts, of course, but overall I found it to be an enjoyable read. Gave it 3 stars out of 5. That's not to say that Twilight is like the best series ever. I know that there are problems with Twilight, and I don't dismiss those problems, but I also still enjoy the books. If I get hate for it, I get hate for it. Alright, that's it for today's video. Thanks for tuning in. If you're enjoying my content, make sure to hit subscribe. And until next time, make sure to read good books, drink good coffee, take care of yourselves and each other. Bye.